top of the stair, and all my cares just drift right into space. On the roof is peaceful as can be.
One of us needs to talk.
And there the world below.
Don't ask me what song it is.
This is from the 50s.
Let me tell you now, when I come home feeling tired and weak, I go up where the air is fresh and sweet.
I feel like there's a punchline.
This is up on the roof.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I knew that was coming.
Good morning. This is Tampa Home Talk, and we are excited that you joined us for hour number 2. And we also have Wes Edwards with us today with Sharp Roofing. Welcome, and thanks for hanging out.
Thank you. Good morning.
And, of course, Leo Kane sticking around for hour number 2. And
Roofing is my second favorite topic.
yeah, and Adam hightailed it out of here.
Because roofing is his least favorite subject.
I am certain of that. So really quick before we dive into roofing, and we've got a lot to cover. Just want to kind of recap on the numbers, because in looking at this, when you look at what's pending, Leo, we're selling 125% more than what we have to sell. So if there's only 1,500 new homes that hit the market, and over 2,000 of those have sold or have went under contract, we're selling 125% of what we have to sell.
So what does that put our inventory at?
Well, it's one of those things that, after it's closed, then you can count it. But looking at this, again, we're going to be close to a 1-month absorption rate. But right now, we pulled this morning in 3 counties in Tampa. So Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas, there's only 1,500 homes to pick from, period.
What?
That's it. 3 counties, 1,500 homes.
Oh, there's a home for everyone out there somewhere.
Not when there's over 2,000 pending, there's not.
Wow.
We have way more demand than supply.
I've seen some crazy stuff. I'm seeing people buy homes they normally wouldn't and pass on because we're coming out with lots of defects and people are just still gobbling up those houses.
So let's talk about that, right? Because we're going to see roofing defects. We're talking about a couple of storms that could actually be rolling through.
We had some vicious storm. February 6th, June 9th. We've had some vicious storm events this year so far.
So for you, is that a hot topic for you? Are you excited when storms come through because you're going to get a whole bunch of roofs to replace?
Well, we like to see tropical depression because they point out leaks. People start paying attention to things they may have ignored during the winter season. We do not like hurricanes, however. Generally speaking, a hurricane means that there's going to be massive damage, catastrophic type thing. That attracts a lot of undesirable contractors maybe from around the country who see a chance to make a quick buck off of people who may not understand what's going on. And unfortunately for the people in our community, that often means, they have a roofer show up their door. They have no idea where they're from. They could be from Texas, from Georgia, from somewhere else. They do some work for them. They get money from them. And then when they have a problem possibly down the road because of poor workmanship, because that's the most critical thing is workmanship, then who do they turn to? Where do they go? And that's one of the things I've seen. I'm a 6th-generation Floridian, been through quite a few hurricanes in my life. And that's one of the unfortunate things I see happen to members of the community. People don't know, and worse than that, people taking their money, never doing the work, all kind of things happen.
So, Wes, what should people be? Let's face it, if a storm comes through, right, there's a lot of damage everywhere, you guys can't work fast enough, right? It's just one of those things. And so what should the person that's in a desperate situation be asking and looking for to make sure they don't get taken advantage of?
Yeah, I think number one, and this kind of steps out of my arena slightly, but I would assume the best advice for anyone is call your insurance company first.
Correct, yeah. But for you answering, let's imagine, you own a roofing company, so it's not the same, but let's say you didn't, and your roof has just collapsed or caved in or it's leaking or raining in your house.
Yeah, mostly it's going to be shingle displacement. Things have blown off. Tabs are missing. Things have happened. So number one, depends on your ability to manage your own thing. If you got a tarp and sandbags, obviously that helps tremendously. But you want to, try to get in line as quickly as possible. Contact someone to come by and take a look at your roof to see if they can tarp it for you until you can figure out what's going on. That's when you see all the blue tarps and all this stuff come out.
But going back to what we said, because, workmanship is crucial, and it's one of those things you're not thinking about in the moment. But if your roof starts leaking, right?
Well, one of the things people don't realize about roofs is roofing accounts for about 5% of the construction out there, all construction. But it accounts for 85% of all lawsuits.
Ooh.
And that's a statistic that's compiled by a roofing manufacturer called GAF. They make all different types of roofing materials, but that's why they teach roofers and they teach engineers and they teach architects how to specify a roof, how to install a roof, how to check for manufacturer defects, and how to do all that, because it's such a litigious arena because it's your roof.
It's expensive.
It's expensive, and B, when it fails,
it's one of the most important things you need.
You get all this cascading damage. You get water staining. You get mold growth. You get insulation that becomes compressed. I mean, that's why it's such a big arena, because it's expensive, and when it fails big.
And, thinking about this, you said 85% lawsuits. Is that typically like workmanship, construction defects?
It's a combination of construction defect and storm related. Here's the problem you get when you have a storm roll through. You're going to file an insurance claim. Your insurance claim is going to hire an engineer who's going to come out there and say it's related to foot traffic, thermal expansion and contraction, and lack of maintenance. Also related to installation. The public adjuster is going to hire an engineer, and he's going to say it was caused by cyclical suction and compression on the tiles and the shingles by which an opening existed. So you have two experts that are pointing fingers right at each other, so you end up either with an insurance claim or what we call a 558 construction defect lawsuit. So
against who?
If it's an insurance claim, it's against the insurance company, but the insurance company is going to try and flip it to the person that installed the roof. So not only do roofers have it bad with 85% lawsuit out of all the lawsuits in the industry for construction, they also have it bad because they're on ladders that aren't attached to buildings. They have the highest workers' comp premiums out there for their employees. And when the storm rolls through, they have it really bad because usually you get your roof replaced every 15, 20 years, tile 50 to 100 years. That makes all that work available in a really short time period. So it completely disrupts the market. So roofers are actually one of the toughest industries to survive in.
And you've been in it for a long time.
17 years I've been in it. The company I'm with now has been here in the Odessa area for 14 years. And I have to stick this in since you sort of set me up for it. So you mentioned GAF. And do you know their highest certification designation for a roofer?
The Gold Elite?
Yeah, Master Elite Contractor. That's what we are. We're a GAF Master Elite.
What does that mean?
It just means that GAF is kind of certifying that they feel that your company provides the standards that they expect for installation of their products to back their warranties, and I can offer a silver or gold warranty, which GAF backs the workmanship, which this is kind of not typical, backs the workmanship of the contractor for 10 or up to 25 years if it's gold.
So this is a perfect segue into the question. I thought I've seen on GAF, it says a 30-year shingle or a 40-year shingle. Have I seen that?
You have, and what they're doing is they're guaranteeing the shingle against manufacturer's defects, saying that they managed, and made the shingle to specifications per Florida NOAs to the ASTM standards. But one of the things people have to remember in Florida here, and obviously we know it since we're in the state with probably the greatest number of dermatologists in the nation, is that the sun here is different, and these shingles are made to go on everywhere from northern states to southern states. And so therefore, how long they last is actually going to depend on and provide the storm protection. Because remember, the key thing for any insurance company is not does your roof leak or the shingles look bad, it's are they going to hold up in a high wind event. And so in Florida, they don't last as long. The sun, and we can talk about that in a minute, why they wear out. But
yeah, I want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about the life expectancy here in Florida. And Leo, I know you guys will both have some topics and opinions and thoughts on that. And then if there's anything you can do to make them last a little bit longer, considering it's supposed to be a 30-year shingle, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a few minutes here on Tampa Home Talk. If you've got some roofing questions, call or text 813-377-2775, 813-377-2775. We'll have to talk about flashing at some point too, because I know that's a big defect, and I know you'll love to talk about that. Again, 813-377-2775. Stick around. We'll be back in just a minute.
This is the radio edit version, of course.
Thank goodness.
Thought I'd scare you a little bit there.
Yeah, I was wondering about that one.
I want to hear the Cold Chamber version of that song, not the whoever this is version.
The Cold Chamber. What about the Blood Gang version?
Oh, that one's vicious,
That's
too.
a bad one, yeah.
Yeah.
That one's vicious. I knew I would get Katrina on that, though.
Yeah, welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk, and if you have not heard, we have Wes Edwards in the studio from Sharp Roofing, and we are talking all about roofing, some of the stuff you're seeing now, some of the stuff we may be seeing as these storms start quickly approaching. And so we have a lot to cover. Like, I'm trying to think where we should dive in, but I guess let's just talk about roof life and expectancy, right? On a 30-year shingle here in Florida, like, clear that up for someone listening, will you?
Okay, so how long the shingle lasts depends on quite a few factors. One is how much shade it gets, because the sun is what wears it out. Basically, the granules protect the shingle from the sun. What we see is the color on the roof. That's their main job, is sunscreen. Rain washes those granules off, just like it wears down mountains, of course. You see them in your driveway coming out of the gutter downspout. As those dissipate, the sun can attack the asphalt base, just like it does out in the parking lot, for example. It evaporates the asphalt out. So when you have a state like Florida, where it rains a lot, really hard, and it also has some pretty severe sunshine, particularly in the summer when it's really beating down on us like a hammer, then those shingles are not going to last as long in this state at this latitude. And the further south you go, that's why you see so many tile roofs down in Naples.
The worse it is.
The worse it is, okay? So they don't last as long as they do in other states, maybe further northern states, okay?
So what's not as long?
Well, the insurance companies, of course, as you know, as a realtor and dealing with trying to close a house, and as Leo has probably run into, they have this sort of invisible line in the sand. When it passes 15 years old in this state, they start getting worried. And one of the main reasons is because of wind warranty on product. No matter the manufacturer, there's about 7 of them. Their wind warranty stops at 15 years. Okay, it doesn't mean it's going to fail. Doesn't mean it's going to just jump off the roof. I've seen them last a lot longer than that. As long as they have good adhesion and good flexibility, they're still good to protect the home. But they're getting nervous about it. Why? Because of what we talked about. Hurricanes have caused loss.
Not getting any of those wind mitigation credits, right, Leo?
Right. And they want to protect their stockholders. So they're going to make sure that that roof is protected against catastrophic loss. And one of the ways they can do that is by telling people, hey, if your roof's X number of years old, we want you, if it's an asphalt shingle roof, of course, we want you to replace it because you're a teenage driver instead of married and 35.
So I'm going to ask just a silly question. Leo, I know you'll want to chime in on this, but thinking about what you're saying, and if you're a homeowner, you know exactly what you're saying. If you've been on the roof ever cleaning your gutters, you see those granulars all in the gutters, which means your roof is slowly wearing and dissipating over time. Why isn't there an additional type of roofing material other than tile, shingle, metal? Why aren't we seeing the hardy plank, right? Which is known to last forever. Why aren't we seeing that layered hardy plank stuff more like a tile or dimensional roof on the roof?
Hardy plank is a cementitious, which means cement-based product. So if you don't paint it, it actually absorbs water. So that it's not doesn't.
So painting it, why wouldn't you?
And when you paint it, you add weight.
Right. So that's what I was wondering. Is it too heavy to be the roof?
It could be. I mean, I had an issue when I first got started in the residential market. I had an issue with someone that had a shingle roof, and instead of replacing it, they would just paint more goop on it. Well, on their 6th gooping, as I call it, the trusses started to collapse because it became too heavy.
Got it.
So yeah, I wouldn't think of that. I mean, shingles is basically if you're driving down the road, that asphalt you're driving on, that's shingle. So that's weather resistant, that takes the wear and tear, that takes the beating. Tile.
So I'm not an engineer, I'm not an architect, but why, just asking from a curious standpoint, why would we not build with more steel or metal trusses?
Cost. I mean, you have to think.
But the long-term cost is really cheaper.
Well, you have to think. If you have a block building for the first floor, they do wood on the second floor.
Right.
It's cheaper.
Right.
And they do trusses in wood because it's cheaper.
Right.
You can hand carry your trusses as opposed to needing a crane. So I mean, yeah, ideally you.
So I'm building my house from the ground up or replacing my roof. Maybe there's even truss damage, right? And I'm replacing it. Why would I not go to metal if I don't want to replace my roof in 15 years? Can you? Is there anything against building codes that would prevent you from having metal trusses?
Well, there's nothing that'll prevent you other than money from going to metal trusses. I mean, wood trusses are perfectly fine. And I mean, wood trusses, going from shingle to metal roof, I prefer a metal roof. I think that of all the roof options out there, metal is probably your best option. Because tile is brittle by nature, that's not a very good option. It's not very cost effective. And shingles most cost effective. I mean, that's why people do it. And I hear so many times people say, well, 15 years from now, I won't be alive or I won't own this house. So they're not going to spend the money to do what's right. They're going to spend the money to do what's now.
Yeah, if you're more like me, like and you've been in your home for a long term, or you would keep it and buy your next one and rent that one, I would opt to spend more money to have a longer lasting roof.
Yeah, I think some of the things to think about, and Leo touched on a lot of good points. One, when you mentioned that about other products, it kind of comes down to this. So if you're buying life insurance, you got term or you got whole, right? They sell a lot of term life insurance. Why? It's cheaper. Okay, people don't often take the long-term view. Okay? Well, I'm just saying a lot of people do. Okay,
getting into that, the idea is you don't have a mortgage payment or you're more financially sound after that term period. And you don't need it.
So a lot of people, when they do this, you're a realtor. And you know what the average life or time cycle is for someone to live in a property. It's generally not 20 years, okay?
4 to 5 years.
Right. So, most people are, like, as Leo mentioned, that's all they're thinking about. That's all they're trying to cover. When I work with a church, I work with over 35 churches, have helped them replace their roof. I always tell them to consider a metal roof. Why? For the reasons you're talking about. They get longer lasting protection, more storm protection. They're investing that money from tithing. It should be invested in a way that helps the people in the future, even when they're gone.
Right.
Okay?
So let's talk about that. What are the pros and cons of a metal roof, and what's the life expectancy of a metal roof, and are there different kinds of metal roofs?
There's all kinds of metal roofs. Typical life expectancy would at least be around 50 years.
50.
Yeah, as usual, it's going to be dependent on workmanship. I've seen plenty of them that were put on, and we're fixing them within 4 or 5 years. That's for any product, right?
What are some of the defects you see in those, in the metal roofs?
It's not a defect of the material. It's a workmanship
That's
issue.
what I'm asking. So
a minute ago you mentioned about flashing, for example. That's one because it's a little more technically skilled install. The people really need to be well trained. It's important that you have people that are well trained to do this for you because it's supposed to last you such a long time. It should not depend on sealants and things like that. It's supposed to be put together in such a way that it prevents an issue either during a storm, but just from typical rains.
Leo, how are you guys seeing that when the flashing, that goes under your shingle, so it's covered up? So how do you guys know as an inspector that it was actually installed properly?
Well, I mean, visually we can see flashings. I mean, we can either see the bumps on the shingles. If there's something called a counter flashing, we check for that, because like a flashing is nice because the flashing is shaped like an L and it protects your shingles and your underlayment when water gets back there. But you need something over the flashing called the counter flashing to prevent the water from getting behind the flashing.
And what does that look like?
Counter flashing? It's just basically 2 L's, L for flashing, L for counter flashing, and then the L's go...
They make a square?
Pretty much.
Rectangle?
That's a oversimplification.
Got it.
Now it's your turn to cringe on my oversimplification.
It's different depending on the type of roof you're putting on. One for a tile or a metal roof, counter flashing is different than what you would do for asphalt shingles. It's just basically an extra layer of protection to prevent the water from getting behind it on the wall.
So you think it's a matter of the people installing the roof are not trained well enough to do good quality workmanship?
I think that, we do not have a school for this. Most people learn what they do from whoever is training them happens to be on the job.
Definitely.
They can teach them bad habits that maybe they have. And so that's one of probably the biggest flaws is I see. We were just discussing this in my office yesterday. We have a repair division. If workmanship weren't so important, why do I keep these guys as busy as I do?
Just repairing roofs.
Right, just repairing roofs, all right. And workmanship is one of the most critical components. However, in the state, and it's kind of surprising to me, insurance companies don't ask for this, is at least some sort of, I don't care if it's a week-long training on here's proper nail pattern, here's proper installation pattern here. So at least at one point these guys, because otherwise it's up to the contractor to make sure you have your own internal school.
I do think it should be required. I agree.
Yeah,
But
it's something,
certain shingle manufacturers like Owens Corning puts a strip on their shingle for where the nails go. I mean, that's how important the nails are. Because if you don't put the nails in a certain area, you don't get 12 nails per shingle with the 6 and 6 overlay. And
Think
then
about
they just blow
how
off.
crazy that is that the manufacturer actually printed where the nails need to go.
Well,
They call it a
I have
dummy
to laugh
strip.
at
They
that.
call it a dummy strip.
And GAF has the new HTZ shingle,
It's chalk.
has no max wind warranty on it. Okay, they're the only one that have that, and they just changed their nail line. So it's very clearly defined, a little bit bigger than normal. But these shingles, you know how they mostly will say 130 mile an hour wind max? They don't have a wind max.
Wow.
They're saying no matter what the wind is, we're good.
All right, so hang on. We're going to tell you what the best type of roof will be for the Florida climate. How about that? We'll chat
Okay.
about that when we come back right after the break. This is Tampa Home Talk. Our off-air number is 813-377-2775, 813-377-2775. Back in a moment.
Well, good morning. Welcome back. Oh, this hour's flying by. Last hour flew by. Flying like the wind across a hot tin roof.
Well, I know Wes has got a lot of stuff he wants to cover, but I'm sure the person listening to the show this morning is wondering what's the best type of roof to put on for Florida climate.
Yeah, I mean, I think the example doesn't have to be given by me, in my opinion. It's pretty easy to know. When Irma went through down south, the only roof you could put on in the Keys anymore is metal.
Metal.
They won't allow you to put anything else on. Okay, so the state and the insurance companies are defining that as their top line protection against storms. Okay, so forget my opinion.
We could be all metal roofs in Florida.
Yeah, well, the best roof structure is actually what they do on the islands, and you have a complete concrete building. Your roof deck is concrete,
Yes.
and it's got a coating on it. That is the best roof
correct.
covering.
How do they make the roof deck out of concrete? Is that steel underneath?
Well, you just have you can have concrete trusses at that point. You can
Okay.
have concrete. It's called T construction at that point is what it's called, where you actually pour your beams out of concrete, and there's steel inside the concrete. It's called rebar.
Right.
So that's going to be your best roof. Second best, I would still say, is the metal. The downside to metal, and it looks best. These are the best pictures of when a metal roof fails because it peels off like a sardine can. They look really neat when they fail, but it is your best roof, and it is your best.
Only an engineer that does inspections on a roof would say that.
It is your best roofing material, and that's why I have a metal roof, and that's why when my roof needs to be replaced in a couple of years, I'm going to put another metal roof on.
But I thought they lasted 50 years.
I have a 100-year-old house.
Oh, so it's been that long?
It's been a long time. I mean,
It also depends on if he lives by the ocean. It's a little different if the metal's got to deal with the salt
He's by
water.
the chickens, and he were.
yeah, I'm in downtown Tampa.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
I'm
I
good.
think metal's quite expensive. It's going to be double, at least, of what an asphalt shingle roof is. As we talked about, most people aren't in the home that long. Asphalt shingles are the main thing that people put on. That's the main reason why. They're made from a recycled product. Asphalt's made from what's left over when you make oil, okay? So they recycle this product. They put it on a fiberglass base. They make a good quality product that will hold in plenty strong storms. Okay, we had plenty of roofs that made it through. I had roofs that were put on in the Panama City area that went through Michael and stayed on, depending on the quality of the product and the quality of the insulation. Because Florida NOAs test these things at high wind. And in fact, I was just mentioning.
Yeah, see, on the break, you were talking about something.
Yeah, I was mentioning, Leo, if you go online, and by the way, online, if you go to YouTube, type in Sharp Roofing, you'll get Sharp Roofing University. I make little 90-second videos explaining all this stuff.
That's
so
great.
People can look at that. But anyway, there's one by GAF about an HDZ shingle. I think it's pretty cool. They put it in the Florida wind tunnel. The only nails they put in the shingles are around the perimeter. The rest of them are basically only stuck together by the new adhesive quality that they have for them. And these shingles don't blow off in 150 mile an hour
What is
wind.
it, like Gorilla Glue or what?
It's patented technology. What do I know? They won't tell me.
Space age polymers.
Yeah, but it works really well. And I think Owens Corning has an excellent product for that as well. The duration shingle you were talking about previously.
Have you seen a lot of those, Leo?
That's
But the really high-end shingles, people don't want to pay for them.
Yeah. So is that as much as metal or no?
No, these shingles that we're talking about right now are the duration and the HGZ. For us, HGZ is the same. It's just it's the architectural shingle we put on for just what we're putting on every house we're doing this week, next week. That's what we're putting on if they're getting asphalt shingles.
And they're lasting how long?
Those are probably, as far as how long they will protect that home from wind, my personal opinion is they'll last probably 25 years or something, but the insurance companies drive the bus,
15.
not me.
Yeah. So here's your problem with the insurance companies, and I'm glad Adam's not here because we argue about this all the time, is the insurance companies still take the weakest component, and that's what drives their overall policy. So with shingles, you have 3-tab shingles that you're lucky to get 12 to 15 years out of.
Those are the ones that are side by side that don't overlap.
And they're gonna say all shingles 15 years need to be replaced. Mm-hmm. And that's the lazy method of risk that they're going to use. But the other thing that's really neat from my end on an engineering standpoint is, I agree that GAF, Owens Corning, all these companies are coming out with these new adhesives that are lasting really well. But what we start to see in the field after 10 years, those still start to break down. They're not doing tests where they take the HDZ and the duration shingles and take a 10-year section of roof and put it in the wind tunnel and see if it still works. So you have, it's called TAS 203, which is the testing standard for tile roofs on an uplift test. But it's only for new roofs, and that's what you have to do in Miami-Dade to prove you put the tile roof on correctly. But it only works for new roofs. What they're finding is if you go back and do that test 2 years after you put the new roof on, it fails. And that's with tile in Miami. So, it's great. I love the new adhesives, 15, 30 years. You get so much conflicting data, but when it comes down to a storm event, if your shingles have aged, you still get a breakdown and you can still have a loss.
The problem with tile, too, is as they age, you guys only want to walk on them because they can break, right?
Yeah, you have to walk on tile roofs in a specific way or they just shatter. They're very brittle. You don't want to walk where the interlocks are and where they have flex. You basically walk opposite that where you can walk and the tiles aren't flexing.
I tell you what, if I was a seller and I had a tile roof and I was getting a home inspection selling that, I would be very particular on who was on my roof.
Drone.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get a drone license.
Makes sense. Okay, you have a lot to cover, Wes. I know you do. So
I want to make sure we can talk about the shingles. Right now we have a storm coming our way. I just had a few tips for folks I hope will be helpful to you. Some of them will sound logical. I always tell everyone if I give you information you don't need, throw it away. Hopefully I give you a little something that'll help. For hurricane prep, one of the things I like to talk to people about is go outside your home, do something that even I don't do as a roofing contractor because none of us think of it. Just go around your home, walk outside. If you have a 2-story, look down, go to your neighbor's house, look across, use a drone, as Leo mentioned. Take a look at your house. Sometimes it's simple things. You have asphalt shingles that may have slipped or tile that may have slipped out of place. You want to make sure those are back in place. You may have a ridge cap that's missing because that's pretty common. That's on my Roofing University website. One of the videos talks about this, and I see it a lot. You just want to make sure that you're starting with at least something that's covering your roof system, and we see this a lot. So just go around, walk around, take a look at your roof system, look on the ground, see if you see anything laying there. Also do this after the wind comes in, and you'll know if anything, of course, blew off the roof that's laying in your yard. The other things that are important to do that I see a lot of people don't do is they let their crepe myrtle or their palm tree or stuff like that grow too close to their home. And you can take a limb that's only big around as your pinky finger, and during a storm event like this, it's just whacking the tar out of the side of your house. It's breaking up shingles, causing problems, maybe breaking tile. So you want to make sure you keep those trimmed back. If you have a way to reach up and do that safely or call someone to do it for you, that'd be a great thing to have taken care of. Make sure you have a tarp at home. A lot of the roofs in our area are actually quite low slope. They're not as steep as in some other areas of the state. I know plenty of people that are able to get up there. I don't advise you doing it, getting up in a storm, but if you feel safe, if you feel you can do it, it's a pretty simple thing. Have a tarp, have some Mason's twine, which is very strong. Save your Publix little plastic baggies. Get play sand, put it in the baggie, tie it up with the string, tie it to your tarp, throw your tarp down. Now, there's no nails in your roof, no fastener. It will hold it there and cover the area you're talking about. If there's a leak below, you have to make sure you go over the ridge above, or the water will just run on the tarp and still come in. These are a few small things that maybe, I have one more. Check your roof for debris. A lot of folks have trees around their home. They have debris in their gutters. They have debris in their valleys, maybe at sidewall flashing. Get all that stuff out of there so the water can flow off and flow out the way it's supposed to, and you're not backing it up and causing an issue in a really heavy rainstorm.
See, what he was talking about with the steepness of a roof, what's neat in Florida is we don't have snow. See, up north, you have to have a really steep pitched roof because when you want the snow to fall off.
Right.
Otherwise,
it's heavy.
Snow becomes heavy. Like 100 square feet of water could,
a lot of ice.
Could represent a ton of weight, like a literal ton, 2,200 pounds. So that's why you have the really steep roofs. In Florida, it's opposite. You want a flatter roof, not flat, but a flatter roof, so that you can deflect wind.
Right.
So that's why we have what's called a hip roof, which looks like a pyramid here, and you have a gable roof up north, which looks like
a steeple
or triangle. Because we're just trying down here, we're trying to deflect wind, and we don't have to worry about snow. So it makes the roofs very walkable until you get to a point where the roof gets above, we'll say, 512. 512 is kind of the cutoff for walkability for normal people. That means for every
How do they inspect those when they get really steep?
We'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
For every 12 inches you walk in one direction, there's a 5-inch drop. So when you get to 612, that becomes the cutoff between inspectors and roofers on what they can walk. When you get above 612, you really have to, when you're like doing roofs, some of them put foam up against the side of the roof and use that so they can walk on it. Otherwise, it slide right off. I have a special pair of shoes I wear on something steeper than a 612. Cougar Paws, which basically has the foam built into the shoe, so I can walk on the roof.
Is it like a high heel with a wedge?
No, it's like flat.
I haven't seen it. So.
Designed by a roofer who doesn't do roofing anymore.
Oh,
to walk on roofs. But I love that. I won't walk on steep roofs without them because I just fall right off. But I mean, so yeah, 512, 612. 612 is kind of the cutoff here in Florida. Most roofs are 612 or less. That means for every 12 inches across, you're going 6 inches down. And you really only get those in these weird townhome type things where you have those huge, you go into your attic and you look up and you're like, I wish this 30 extra feet of attic space was
living space.
Was living space. That's what you look when you go up into these tall attics. And they just build them that way. That's where you get your steep roofs. But most normal single-family homes, you're looking at a 512 or a 612 at most. You're looking at something that's going to shed wind, and you're looking at something that you can walk to clean and maintain. That's my monologue where I was going.
Well, yeah, makes sense. Have you seen the cost for manufacturers rise with just everything
August
being
1st,
so crazy now?
Yeah, so speaking of that and COVID and how we've had an impact, so a couple things happened all at once. As COVID came on, like a lot of people, we assumed that the things were going to happen in the marketplace that slowed us all down with things. And so the manufacturers have explained to me when I called and asked, they basically said, look, we cut back on production because we didn't think we were going to be selling as much. They normally have a certain amount sitting around. Couple that, not having as much back inventory, along with the fact that a lot of people who might be on that line now can't show up if they're positive, and these
Plus
people
they closed.
Yeah, these people are trained. Like we saw in meat, for example, where they couldn't keep people in there. Same thing are happening in some of the manufacturing plants. They are way behind and they're running their plant 24/7. They're working hard as they can to catch up, but it went the other way.
Yes.
And what happened is everybody was home, I guess, at their house, and they decided, let's take care of these projects. And for any of us, by the way, that went with our mask to Home Depot or Lowe's, you've learned that quickly because you couldn't even get in line in the place. So the same thing happened. Products gone. Prices have gone up substantially percentage-wise for product.
Do you know roughly what percentage?
Well, I know shingles run about, $80-something a square up near 90, and they went up, some of them, anywhere from $5 to $7 a square.
Wow.
Construction prices have gone up recently so much in the past 4 months. We have stopped offering pricing. Like we used to put pricing in our reports. We've stopped offering that.
You can't keep up.
Can't keep up with the rates that are
fascinating.
In the time it takes someone to get a report and wait 2 weeks to go get quotes, they're already 10%.
And by the way, when you don't have enough guys out there, and there's also a labor shortage because you can't get it done fast enough, which construction has been going on for quite a while now, guys start to name their price. If you can't pay them, they got somebody down the road that will.
All right, this is Tampa Home Talk. Our off-air number is 813-377-2775. We'll be back in just a minute.
Good morning. Welcome back. This is Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering and Inspection. I am joined with the experts from Scharf Roofing and the Realtor.
Katrina Madewell, that's me.
Realtor?
Realtor.
Katrina Madewell. So excited. Katrina, this is your, you've got a bunch of questions you still
We
want to ask.
covered a lot. Like, I'm trying to figure out what we should fit in the last segment. So we were talking about concrete. Like, is that actually becoming a viable, popular choice?
I don't see a lot of it. Maybe Leo does.
We do work in Belize. We do work in Puerto Rico. We see concrete down there.
There, yes.
Yeah. We don't see a lot of it here. It's
How much more expensive is that? Do you know?
It's so weird because like concrete's cheaper in other countries.
Yeah.
Concrete's actually cheaper than the wood trusses, and it's cheaper than the tiles and the shingles. Just because it's cheaper you can source concrete locally everywhere because it's just basically sand.
Right.
Whereas sourcing all these other roofing materials becomes more difficult in these countries, so they actually just gravitate towards concrete. Here it's the other way around. All these other materials are a lot cheaper. Another fun fact is one of Florida's major exports is concrete. Because we have all these, those blasting pits they do? They blast an area and then it becomes a subdivision later on.
Yeah.
While it's being blasted, all that blasting turns into concrete.
Wow.
A lot of Portland cement. Yeah, we worked on one, as I mentioned to you. The only one I've worked on recently, we did the men's and women's facility among some other prisons in the state. And the dorms for them, of course, have a concrete roof, so they can't figure out how to get out of there. Maximum security prison. So that was interesting to work on, of course.
So that would make sense. They put a concrete roof on a prison.
Yeah, I actually did a prison, two of them, one in Moorhaven, one in South Bay, and we built an expansion for well-deserving citizens. That was concrete.
I love the way you put stuff.
That was kind of neat because they did prefab concrete, so they built each cell off-site. So literally, we had some masonry walls up for columns, and then literally overnight, all the cells came in. So we went from like flat to 4 stories overnight.
Instant building, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was an awesome operation, but yeah, that was all concrete roof.
So, I don't know. It's interesting. I always wonder, like, I know you said the islands, it's like every structure, right, is all concrete. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about global warming and how it's, we're starting to see more and more storms and how that can have an impact on the number of storms that we see. So with that being said, I wonder if Florida will get to a place to where our construction is more concrete.
It would be awesome now from a pure science standpoint. It would be awesome if we did all concrete roofs and they were all painted white. Because as Greenland starts to, as that ice starts to melt, we're losing a lot of whiteness on the Earth. And what the whiteness does is reflects solar radiation. Mm-hmm. So if we had all our roofs and our roofs were white, they would actually replicate the reflection of solar, and we can actually cool the Earth that way.
That's interesting. Did not think about that.
Yeah. So a quick fact, just to give you an idea, we do fluid applied roof systems. We use a product called VF5, volatile-free incorporated. And
what is that? What's a fluid?
It's a silicone. What we use is a silicone. There's different ways you can do what's underneath, but the top coat basically that protects from the sun and protects whatever roof you put on underneath is a silicone. Made from silica, the sun doesn't wear it out like it does asphalt, has high reflective quality, what's called the albedo rating, reflects visible, infrared, and ultraviolet light rays. And here's an interesting fact when you work on them. When you work on an asphalt-based roof or one of the hot mop old ones that we used to do, tar and gravel type roofs, you would stand on them and your feet are hot, but it's not so hot above. Why? It's absorbing all the sun's energy, okay? And it has great emissivity, which means it passes it through into the attic below, by the way, anything below it. This stuff has an incredibly high, what's called an albedo rating, reflects somewhere around 89% of the sun's energy. And when I proved this to somebody once. I got on one of these roofs. I literally it was 95 degrees out, full sun day in Florida. I laid my cheek on the roof. It feels cooler than the air around you. But standing up here, it feels like you're in a microwave. Why? It's reflecting all the energy back up at you. When my guys work on these roofs, you have to wear sunglasses, and most of them are wearing long sleeves and long everything with one of those face shields like the fishermen use because the reflection is unbelievable. So it really does what he's talking about. We check attic temperatures with a thermal scan gun and a little laser. They're not expensive. Anybody could buy one at Home Depot. And you check the plywood or the roof underneath. Before we put this material on, it can be, if it was an asphalt-based product, the bottom of that can be 160 degrees easily. And it doesn't even have to be that hot out. It's just the sun's energy. It could be a 75-degree day in full sun, and that's what a shingle or that type of roof will reach. We put one of these roofs on, and metal, by the way. Metal does the same thing. It has poor emissivity, so the heat doesn't pass through easily. We shoot that, it can easily be 50 degrees less. So substantial energy savings and that reflection.
So this makes total sense to me, but why we still see all these dark roofs instead of light roofs, I don't understand that.
Because asphalt shingles, if they're asphalt shingles, they don't do that. I have a video online on my roofing university, how hot do roofs get, and one of the things I do is go up there and I point at a white granulated product. It's still 155 because it's asphalt base.
Yeah, asphalt's just going to absorb, because asphalt's like a gravel, like a sand, basically, and it's just absorbing. And then there's a mat. The mat underneath all the shingles is black anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's a green shingle, it's a white shingle. There's still got a black mat underneath. And it just absorbs. I've seen it, like we've had subdivisions that switch from tile to shingle, and they all complain their energy bills double.
So what about the radiant heat barriers? How do those play a part?
I'll let you speak to that.
Well, I mean,
Because we don't deal with them a lot.
The radiant heat barriers, those go in the attic. They're gonna keep the attic cooler, but they're just gonna make the wood hotter. Because basically, you have to think about it. The heat has to hit the barrier to bounce back up. So if you're hitting the barrier, which is below the wood, your wood is getting to that temperature still.
Yeah, the main thing important really for most of us is ventilation. And it's just basically, do you have a good amount of exhaust? That exhaust cannot exceed the intake at the soffit where it comes in, which is where you want it to come in. I often tell people, take a leaf blower, walk around your house, and gently, you don't want to do it too hard, but go on and walk around your soffit.
Never tell them to do that.
They'll blow up.
Never tell them to use a leaf blower on their soffits.
But I've had people, they've got insulation in them, and try to at least make sure their intake is good. And then if they have good exhaust, there's either passive systems like ridge vents that we put on, or active systems like a solar-powered attic fan, which they get a federal credit for, sucks the air out of there. But the point is to keep the airflow up and out. Yes, it does help somewhat with your air conditioning because it keeps it cooler around your ductwork. But the main thing is, as Leo just mentioned, it's just great for your home, for your roof. It gets moisture up and out of there. It protects the plywood because it's trying to help move the heat out, so it's not wanting to buckle or move as much. Keeps the house from moving as much, even if you can keep it at least slightly cooler in that attic space. And it'll at least drop it, 20 degrees, or it makes a difference. And was required by the manufacturer to meet warranty specification, by the way. You don't have enough what they call free board space to get that heat out of that space. It's going to cook those shingles off your roof.
So the bottom line of this hour is go to metal, right?
Yeah. Well, as a re-roofer and any re-roofer out there, we know it's a great product. Of course, if everybody went to metal, we'd be looking for some new work at some point. But unfortunately, a lot of houses. So.
West, thanks for coming. We're already out of time. It's been an hour just like that. We're so glad you're here. Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully, we brought you some value and you learned a little bit. That's our goal for every show. And remember, love where you live, or we're going to fix it. Welcome home. Have a great weekend.
Love where